Today we're jumping into a story that almost everyone has heard of. Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist. It's this incredible tale that kicks off in, well, the absolute worst of places, and it all revolves around one simple but incredibly brave question asked by a little boy. So yeah, let's just dive right in.
So I want you to really think about this question as we go along. Seriously, what would you risk for just one more bite of food? Imagine you have next to nothing. What would push you to risk even that for just a little more? That's the heart of the problem for our main character, Oliver.
Now, before we get into Oliver's story, we've got to talk about the man who wrote it. You see, to really get a handle on the world Oliver lived in, you first have to understand Charles Dickens himself. And believe me, for him, the stuff he was writing about, it wasn't just fiction. It was very, very real.
So here he is, Charles Dickens. We all know him as, one of the greatest novelists of the Victorian era, right? But he was so much more than just a writer. He was a sharp social critic, he was paying super close attention to the world around him, and he became this powerful voice for people who had no voice of their own.
And this is so important to get. Dickens wasn't just making this stuff up. He was writing about the real poverty and injustice he saw all around him in 19th century England. And when he wrote about the awful treatment of orphans, well, he knew what he was talking about. He drew from his own tough childhood experiences. So for Dickens, this story, it was deeply, deeply personal.
Okay, so that personal understanding of what it's like to suffer, that takes us right to the start of Oliver's life. And his story begins in a place that feels like it was literally designed for despair.
And that place is called a workhouse. Now, in Dickens' England, this was the absolute last resort for poor people. I want to be clear, this was not a charity. It was a grim, awful institution where you were sent to live and work under the harshest conditions imaginable. And this is the world Oliver is born into.
So the story kicks off with Oliver being born right there in that workhouse. Just picture it. His mother, this young woman, shows up with holes in her shoes. She's clearly walked a very long way. She gets there just in the nick of time to give birth, but she has no name and there's nobody there for her.
And then you get this line. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. She pressed her cold white lips to its face and then fell back. I mean, wow, that single kiss is pretty much the only act of love Oliver is going to get for years and years. With her very last ounce of strength, his mom kisses him and then she dies. That one moment right there sets the stage for his entire life.
So there it is. In the very first moments of his life, Oliver Twist is an orphan. Think about that. Before he even has a name, he's alone. He's just a burden on the state, stuck in a place that has zero love or pity for him. His life literally begins with loss.
So what was life actually like in the workhouse? Well, it was run by a set of simple, brutal rules. And the biggest, most important one, it was the rule of hunger.
I mean, the way Dickens describes it, it's just miserable. You've got these pale, thin kids who are always cold because they never have enough warm clothes. They're basically being systematically starved. They get 3 meals a day, but it's just this thin soup, they call it gruel. And the rule was absolutely ironclad. You get 1 small bowl and that's it. No more.
And this detail just says it all, doesn't it? The boys were so hungry, they would clean their bowls with their spoons until they literally shone. Can you imagine that? Being so hungry that you're not just finishing your food, you're trying to scrape up every last invisible molecule? This wasn't just, I'm hungry, when's dinner? This was a constant, gnawing starvation.
Well, you can only live like that for so long. This constant hunger pushes the boys to a breaking point. They decide that one of them, just one, has to do the unthinkable. They have to break the rule.
So the boys all get together, and things are dire. They're so hungry that one of them actually threatens to eat one of the other boys if he doesn't get more food. It's insane. So they decide someone has to go up and ask the master for more. And guess who gets picked for this terrifying job? Yep, it falls to Oliver.
And this is it. One of the most famous lines in the history of literature. "Please, sir," he said, "I want some more." Just imagine this little kid, bowl in his hands, probably shaking, totally terrified, but also just so desperate. He walks up to the master and says those 7 simple words. Just look at the contrast here. It's unbelievable. On one hand, you have a starving kid making a polite, quiet, desperate request. And on the other hand, absolute outrage. The master literally turns pale. He is shocked. He cannot believe his ears. Because to him, this isn't a kid asking for food. This is a rebellion. And then you hear from Mr. Bumble,
the official who runs the workhouse. His reaction? One day, they will hang the boy. Just let that sink in. There's no pity, no concern, just this dark, horrible prediction. For asking for a little more soup, he's basically saying Oliver is a criminal who's going to end up on the gallows. It's just wild how an act of survival is seen as a crime.
And the punishment comes down hard and fast. First, the master grabs him. Then, he's shut away all by himself in a dark room. And then, Mr. Bumble beats him every single day. In their eyes, his crime was so terrible that they actually put a sign on the gate offering £5, a lot of money back then, to literally anyone who would just take him away.
So you have to ask yourself, why does this one little scene still hit so hard, even today? What's the big deal?
Well, it's because it was never, ever just about a bowl of soup.
And this is the key takeaway. Dickens wasn't just telling a sad story. He was making an accusation. He was using this one little boy, Oliver, to put the entire social system on trial. He was shining a massive spotlight on how these places that were supposed to help the poor were actually cruel, inhumane factories of suffering, especially for kids. So when Oliver asked for more food, that was really Dickens asking us for more humanity, more compassion, and more justice.
And that kind of leaves us with this final question to think about. I mean, this story was written almost 200 years ago, right? It's about a system that doesn't even exist anymore. But the heart of the story, a vulnerable kid asking for just a little bit of basic dignity from a huge, powerful system that just says no, doesn't that still feel incredibly familiar? It really makes you wonder, where do we still see versions of Oliver's story playing out in the world today?